to Fig. And he says, is there any chance that the Angels sign Blake Snell?
There's an offer out there. I'm led to believe it was 3 years, $30 million. Blake Snell should take that because he could become the ace of the Angel pitching staff. I would not go above 3 years, not for that pitcher. He's a workhorse. He's unique, different personality, walks a lot of batters, never gets beyond the fifth inning. And for Scott Boras to say 7 years, $210 million, $30 million per season. No, I'm not giving him 7 years to go 5 innings per start for the next 7 with a hope he doesn't break down. But he's there. The Red Sox were there on Blake Snell. They backed away. They just got tired of talking about absurd numbers. Red Sox are now in on Jordan Montgomery. But I think they told Scott Boras he's got a chance to be here because the Red Sox really have too many young pitchers. But we're not doing $30 million a year for 5 years, much less 7. If you want to deliver him 3 years for maybe $25 million, because he's not Blake Snell. He's not a Cy Young Award winner, Jordan Montgomery. He's I'd call a tier 2 pitcher, which means he's your third or fourth guy. I'm not paying the third or fourth guy $30 million. I pay him $20 million at 25. Montgomery reinvented himself. Snell has always had dominant stuff. He just hadn't been able to control the dominant stuff. He could save the Angels, but it's got to be 3 years, state-of-the-art money, but only 3 years.
Somehow my hunch is that if Blake Snell signed with the Angels, there'd be all this excitement, and then he would struggle or he'd get hurt or there'd be some curse related to the Angels.
Just walk the house.
Yeah. So I hope he lands somewhere good because I want him to have success and not be this guy that's up and down every year.
So that's where we are with him. Next question.
Okay, let's go here to Craig. He says, Ohio sweatshirt, the Rourke's College.
Hey, Ohio Bobcats. That's where I went. By the way, one of the greatest guys I graduated with at Ohio University just retired. NFL, great columnist. Sports Illustrated. Peter
King?
Just retired.
Really? So you were a colleague of his in college?
He was right behind me.
Really?
What a great career.
Oh, yeah.
He was unique. He was really different. They gave him carte blanche. Peter King went to Sports Illustrated, and then he went, gravitated from that on, expanded to NBC. He just woke up after the Super Bowl and said, I've done enough. And Peter King just retired today. Kind of a really cool guy. So anyhow, Ohio University. If it's in the closet, it's probably got a logo on it somewhere someday. I will wear it all.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Tim. He says, hey, with the roster as it is, what is your projected win total for the Padres? My opinion, no more than 75 to 78 wins. Too many question marks.
I do think the batting order will hit. I think each of those guys they all collectively had substandard seasons, Tim, last year. I think they'll hit better. Now, there is no Soto as part of the equation. My biggest concern is the pitching. And now I'm starting to get concerned about Joe Musgrove because he's had 2 outings in which he got lit. And I understand you give him time and you give him starts, but he's going to run out of starts. He's not had a physical setback yet, but maybe he's just not physically ready. And he's going to wind up in extended spring training, which then relegates your starting rotation to Yu Darvish and 3 guys who came from the Yankees in the Soto trade. And that to me is a bit of a reach. So yeah, 75 wins to 78. That might be a decent number. If Musgrove can come back early in the season and be what Musgrove was, then that kind of changes the equation. But don't know. We'll find. And the other thing is Darvish. He had the bone spur issue in the elbow, and that's been taken care of. But he hasn't pitched in the game yet. He pitches on Tuesday, so we'll just have to wait and see it. We're going to do a baseball preview right at the end of March before the actual season rolls out, and we'll be going division by division. But I'd say right now the Padres are a third-place team in the National League West. I hate to ruin your day, but you're the one that wanted to do this podcast with me. So, yeah, I'd say third place right now, and keep your fingers crossed there's not another pitching setback because that, to me, would be the demise of the season.
Yeah, 75 to 78 wins would be just so Padres, just so,
compared to where we were a year ago this week?
Well, yeah, and it's just we always have high expectations and they always disappoint. Even when our expectations are modest, they still disappoint. So here we go again. I share your opinion. I think the pitching staff, huge question marks. But this Jackson Merrill kid, it kind of reminds me of when Tatis came up as a 19, 20-year-old, and he could be a spark plug for this team.
Little early.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till they start throwing old Charlie late in spring training, then we'll see how he hits. But so far, so good. I'm not throwing cold water on the kid. Kid's got an opportunity, and that was the favorite word of AJ Preller in his training camp interviews were opportunities. Well, we got him, and this kid's grabbed the first one.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Joey, talk a little Raiders. He goes, hey, will the Raiders give up what it takes to move up into the top 3 to get AP's guy, Antonio Pierce's guy, Jaden Daniels? We're talking 3 number 1s and number 2, maybe a player.
Now that's too high. I mean, Jaden Daniels had a great career at Arizona State - LSU. I don't rate him as a top 3 quarterback. I would say probably inside the top 10. So the Raiders might be able to make a trade to get inside the top 10 to get a run at Jaden Daniels. 3 number 1. No, not for him. Hell, nobody's going to get 3 number 1s for Justin Fields when the Bears attempt to trade him maybe this week. They could go up. It is fascinating. All the marquee quarterbacks are not going to throw at the combine. Nobody is.
Really?
The unique names are not going to throw.
Okay.
Jaden Daniels is not going to throw. Caleb Williams is not going to throw. The only ones who are going to throw are the guys that I guess have to prove something, although they did great things in college. Penix is going to throw from Washington. Bo Nix is going to throw from Oregon. But the marquee blue chip names are not going to throw at the combine in Indianapolis this week. Yeah, the Raiders have a chance. It just depends how high they have to go, because then it gets, if you're trying to go where the Raiders are 11th, I think, or 13th. Wherever the Raiders are, if you're going to try to go from 13 to jump to 3, you're going to have to pay a hell of a price. Now, if you're going to try to go from 13 to 7, you can do that. You trade your 1 and you trade your 2, or you trade a 1 and a 3, and whatever the trade chart shows. There's a point value for every pick in the NFL draft. So I think they'll make a concerted effort to bump up to get Jaden Daniels, but I don't think 3 number 1s. No, not for him.
Well, if you're running the Raiders, I mean, Tom Telesco's there, and he's conservative. You mentioned, but he always usually makes smart moves. Do you take a risk on one of these hot young quarterbacks, or do you sign a Justin Fields or one of these other veterans, Ryan Tannehill, just to hold the fort and then build around him?
I think you build it now, because you only got limited time with Max Crosby, and they have to deal with Josh Jacobs, who's a walk free agent too. So Telesco's got a lot of things on his board that he's got to check off here. Now, if this is a 5 deep quarterback draft in the first round, try to get one of those guys, and you spend time with Penix, and Nix is the most unique guy. He might be a quote systems guy, but boy, he's intellectual. He's just really off the charts in terms of, I can do this, consume the playbook, make the right decision, doesn't turn the freaking ball over. You spend this combine on those guys, in addition to maybe trying to get access to Jaden Daniels. There's a way to go get a quarterback, and you go get the quarterback now. Fields is not a free agent. Fields has to be traded.
Right.
Tannehill is, but Tannehill's got 100,000 miles on him and has had injury problems. And, Baker Mayfield's out there, but Tampa's now scrambling to try to get him signed so he doesn't go on the open market. New England is interested in Baker Mayfield. So there's a lot of quarterback debates. I mean, it's a lot of situations involving quarterbacks around the league.
Yeah, well, the Raiders need a relevant quarterback to lead that franchise. So we'll see what they do.
On we
go. Let's go to Tracy. He says Bauer is worth a risk.
As much as I dislike what the person represents because the way he's acted around women, he paid a price. That was a hell of a price. 194 game suspension, lost all that money, lost his credibility. And if you can rent him on a 1-year deal, it's not that he's going to get $15 million or any of that kind of Dodger money. These guys need pitching here. Would you have, John, you tell me. You represent the Padres. You're wearing brown and gold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do you present to me, John Q fan, you're signing this guy. Why are you signing this guy knowing what this guy's reputation is with women? John?
Because we need pitching. And this guy was innocent. And yeah, he does have kind of a history, but we believe in second chances. You'd have to really position it that way. So you have a moral justification, but at the same time, a baseball justification. So I think that's the path they take. But the chatter in social media is that the woman that Trevor Bauer was involved with, that he got in trouble for, has had relationships with some of the Padre players as well. So that could kind of create a little friction in the clubhouse, maybe.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It is really weird, which is why a lot of people have said, not me.
Right.
Next question.
Moving on. Okay, here, let's go to Emmanuel. He says, everyone deserves a second chance. Oh, here we go, including Trevor Bauer, especially since he is willing to sign a minimum wage deal with incentives.
Concur wholeheartedly. Now, I think you can also put language in there that you're going to stay off social media, and then he'll scream first right amendment. And then my response is, okay, first right amendment, you'll be in the unemployment line, but you can type on social media anything you want. We're giving you a chance. I've kind of changed my mind only because the Padres have such a issue right now, I think, with starting pitching.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, they have a big problem. So, yeah, especially if Musgrove doesn't start the season. Hey, let's go here to Phyllis. And she says, hey, Hacksaw and John, we have snow in Manitoba.
All year. I've been in Winnipeg. I'll tell you what, their main intersection is a place called Portage in Maine. It is the coldest street corner in North America.
Really?
Oh, the wind howls off the prairies and goes right down to that intersection. You can't stand out there. When I was doing hockey, we played there, I think, in January. It was so brutally cold, and just the wind never let up. But this is where these people live. And these people, they take their SUV and they park it outside and they plug it in so it heats the engine. I mean, it's just the most unique situation, but they're hardy. You live north of there. I got friends that live in Edmonton, and Edmonton is way north. You're talking about the Great White North.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there. It is cold, and they get even more snow. Edmonton and Calgary. So Winnipeg's a cool city. I hope they can solve the situation with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I've never been there. I should go visit sometime. I've been to British Columbia. I love it there.
I love that.
Okay, hey, let's go here to Isha. He says, hey, just watch that Costanza episode. So good. Talking about the Yankees when they switched up the uniforms. But there's another comment here on uniforms. Let's go to Running Man so we can kind of have the full context. He says, those jerseys and pants are crap. Not only will buy the old vintage jerseys now, not these cheaply made jerseys, but paying premium prices for them.
Yeah, just because it got pinstripes on them doesn't mean they look good on you.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that Major League Baseball, so they do this new contract with Nike, and they're going to come up with this new set of uniforms as kind of an alternative, or city current, etc. When they do this marketing meetings, don't you look and evaluate what they actually look like on players rather than something that's on a board that's a picture of a jersey? I mean, it's just, the city current uniforms, some of them look great. The Padre uniforms, when I first saw them, I call them the 5-flavor sherbet uniforms.
Yeah.
They look like softball uniforms. And no, but they grew on me, and they're kind of cool now.
Yeah.
But some of them, the Dodgers had these all blue ones that they look like softball uniforms from the south side of Chicago. And some of the others look just really ratty. I don't understand the marketing concept. Speaking of uniforms, the LA Clippers today just unveiled new uniforms for next year when they move into the new arena. And they're really snazzy. All blue, all white, all red, a new Clipper logo, not the 5th grade junk artwork that was their logo, the basketball with the LAC, an actual Clipper ship logo. It kind of looks cool. And the third jersey is not only all red, it's got the flags, the nautical flags that used to be the logo of the San Diego Clippers, which I thought were really, really cool. They researched it. They came up with something good. How come MLB can't come up with something good?
Yeah, well, I think, remember when the Padres rolled out their uniforms, they really tested it. They had players' opinions. They had focus groups of fans. Yeah, this is amazing. And also, it seems like the nameplate on the back of the jersey is smaller font and lower and it's just awkward looking.
Yeah, bad. If I were king, I'd solve that problem. Go ahead.
Okay, let's go to Manny. He says, come on, Hacksaw, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, they all have caps So there is limited money a team can spend. With baseball, all the cheap owners will sit out of free agency.
It's a big problem. However, Manny, you're correct about the NFL, but they also have a floor to spending. You have to spend within a certain percentage to what the cap is. That's different than baseball, which allows the Oakland A's. As of this hour, the Oakland A's have a $46 million budget. That's their payroll.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's a disgrace. So that's what differentiates MLB. They allow Oakland and these other small market teams to take revenue sharing, get the TV money, put the money in their pocket, not give it to the players, and then put crap on the field. Those other three leagues, they all have it's called floor to spending. You get close to whatever the floor is. The NFL is 255. That's their salary cap. The floor to spending in the NFL might be 236 this year. Everybody's going to spend at least 236 million, which means there's more money for all levels of players, from the superstar to the mid-level free agent to the journeyman veteran at the end of his career gets a one-year deal. Baseball doesn't do that.
Let's pretend that there was a 236 minimum spend for, let's just say, baseball. It's actually pretty high for baseball. But do you think there's a situation where some of these teams like the A's say, well, we can't afford that? We don't have enough revenue of fans at the ticket turnstiles that are going to come in and pay. I mean, it could put some of these teams in, they'd have to move in order to generate more revenue.
No, because they're all getting revenue sharing. All the small markets get 40 to 50 million a year revenue share. They all get a large chunk of the TV contracts. Then they have their own TV contracts. There is revenue coming into the Oakland Athletics, for example. The dollar value wouldn't be 236.
Mm-hmm.
The Florida spending in baseball, I've been told, if they ever adopted it, it would be a percentage to what the luxury tax limit is. The top luxury tax is 237. I would think the Florida spending might be 120.
Yeah, so like half of it maybe, or a third.
Yeah. So 120. Based on the money that Pittsburgh's getting or Baltimore's getting or Tampa Bay, they could afford to spend 121 million because that's the floor. But baseball doesn't allow that. We're gonna do one of these shows. I just got the payroll numbers. We're gonna post them on the board. You'll be upset if you were in one of those cities.
I want to see the numbers.
Good question, Manny. Thank you.
Okay, now here's a comment from Chris, and I'm going to let you read this one, Lee.
Hacksaw, for old time's sake, would you please give us a Sean Lee offsides? Damn it. How can you pay this guy all this money and have him jump offside 3 times in a game? And he was one of the really nicest guys. Quiet, docile, fun guy. Never got angry at me. It just kind of spilled over in the radio booth that one day. But he was a really good player. And, we always talk about the Chargers and the run to the Super Bowl that we had in 1995. When I was the voice of the Chargers, there are guys that they rented on short-term deals that were difference makers. Sean Lee and the other defensive tackle, Ruben Davis, monstrously big guys, journeyman players, had career years. Stan Brock, the big right tackle, never been to a playoff game. Career year as a leader. You need those kind of guys in addition to your stars. But nice man. Sadly, he's one of the 12 Charger players from that Super Bowl team's already passed away of a heart attack.
Was Sean Lee part of the Tons of Fun?
That's what I called him.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't tons of fun, but between he and Ruben Davis, I think we can figure they combined to weigh 650 pounds at defensive tackle. But they played well, and they stayed on the field the whole time.
Right.
And he was a really nice guy from Brooklyn, New York. Played small college football.
It's so funny how many catchphrases that you have that are used. No, seriously. I mean, you'll hear national broadcasters dropping some of your
everybody into the pattern.
Yeah.
Empty backfield.
Right. And, first down and 99, just you have some classic calls. It's almost like, we talk about George Costanza and Seinfeld, how these like Seinfeld references happen every day. Mm-hmm. We get Hacksaw references all the time.
I get them in the supermarket. I get them at the fitness center. I get them walking down the street. Show me your lightning bolt. And I didn't make that up. That just kind of came off the top of my head.
Yeah, that one is a crazy one. All right, let's go here to Craig. And he says, hey, it's early, but who do you see the Chargers taking in round 1? Bowers, Neighbors, Odunze?
Everybody says, everybody likes Bowers. Picking him at number 5, to me, way too early for a tight end. You could, with the new general manager, You could drop down. You could trade from 5 to 10. Bowers would probably be there. This is a really good year for wide receivers. They want to run the football. They're at the combine today, and that's the first thing that came out of the mouth of Jim Harbaugh is run the football. The new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, yesterday in Indianapolis said, can you imagine how good Justin Herbert would be if we had a good running game? Run the football. If that's the case, then maybe at 5 they take the massive offensive tackle Alt from Notre Dame, or they take this massive offensive tackle from Penn State. Maybe, and both those guys would go in that 5 to 10 slot. So I think O-line first, or you could trade back and maybe Joe Ortiz will do that as general manager and maybe go 5 back to 10, pick up another draft pick. And at 10, you could take Bowers. But if Harbaugh wants to run the football, he needs more than a tight end with the first round pick.
Oh, big time. Now we've talked a lot about how running backs have sort of been less in vogue. They don't get paid as much or drafted later. But remember, the Chargers drafted LaDainian Tomlinson, I think number 5 overall. Do you think if LT was in the league now, would he still go 5 overall?
Good question. Because the game has even become more a throwing game than it has. I would doubt it, but that wouldn't say he wouldn't go 10. I wouldn't go much beyond 10 because he was a great college player.
Oh, he's
and had a
unbelievable.
great college NFL career too. But the game has changed some. Oh, we got unique times, March into April. You think we're going to talk a little NFL draft on this podcast?
Let's go here to some Edmonton folks here from Phyllis. She says, hey, we're trying to, from Winnipeg. He says, we're trying to get the season tickets back to 13,000, but grumpy people with wallets are holding grudges against the owner.
It's a problem. I mean, when you go from 13,300 to 9,500, that's a massive drop. I think I read over the weekend that their revenue is down almost $5 million because of the crowds and the erosion of the season tickets. I wish there were a legitimate answer. I'll have to talk to my friends in Winnipeg as to whether or not, quote, the prices are too high for that marketplace, because ticket sales is of more importance, I think, in the NHL than it is in other sports, just because they don't have the revenue streams from their network TV contracts, et cetera. So I hope they solve it, but they got a first place team. And I think that's the biggest disappointment. I think that's why the president was so upset in Winnipeg on Friday, because he's the one that made this comment about this. We cannot sustain this with the erosion of season ticket support. We can't stay in business this way. And that's why Bettman, I think, is going to be in Winnipeg tomorrow to discuss it.
Isn't that rough? When a team is really trying to win and they are winning, like the Tampa Bay Rays, and they just don't draw as much. Sometimes it just doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah. The Tampa Bay baseball situation is a little bit different because that involves the really crummy old stadium in a bad part of town on the opposite end of the bridge from where the population base is. But Florida are transplants. Hell, if you weren't living here doing this, you'd be living in Florida. You're a baseball fan. You'd probably go see the Rays. I am stunned that either on the Gold Coast, Tampa, or on the, what do they call the East Coast of Florida, Space Coast, that the Marlins don't draw. And what's the biggest sport aside from soccer in the Hispanic community? It's baseball.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Marlins don't draw, and they've been in a World Series a bunch of times with Jim Leland and those guys way back in the day. And Tampa, there's a lot of money there, and they're all transplants too, from the Northeast and the Midwest. And who are those fans? Baseball fans. And they don't go see the Rays, and the Rays have been really good. The stadium is a piece of that equation there. So I hope they can solve this issue in Winnipeg.
Okay, moving on. Let's go here to Jeff talking NFL draft. He says, what are the chances Caleb Williams doesn't go first overall in the NFL draft?
I think he goes number 1, lock, stock, and barrel. Be interesting to see how many quarterbacks go beyond him. But I mean, he's done everything you can humanly do. I mean, is he the next Lamar Jackson? Throw and run. He's really accurate. He's unbelievably athletic. His accuracy when he breaks pocket and has to move, still really, really good. So now I think Caleb is lock, stock, and barrel. And that's why I think the next NFL story that you'll see maybe it's going to be this week. Chicago's probably going to announce they will take trade offers for Justin Fields, the quarterback, and Caleb Williams goes to Chicago. There'll be a learning curve. He had a tough last season at USC because everything around him fell apart, and they had to outscore everybody because the defense was so bad. And yet the kid's a gamer. The kid's a big-time player, and he's a really, really good athlete.
Yeah, really. I mean, I remember when he was at Oklahoma and he was backing up as a freshman, backing up. What's the kid's name? Was it Spencer Rattler?
Yes.
I think was the quarterback.
Wound up at South Carolina.
Yeah, and he struggled at Oklahoma. And then they brought in Caleb Williams, and all of a sudden it was just like magic, just the plays, everything changed when he came into the game. So, you talked a lot about Bo Nix and, systems quarterback, high IQ guy. I just think about Brock Purdy. I mean, he's not really a physical specimen, but the dude has a brain power, and that's what you need in this league, to be successful. Because how many quote unquote star athletes have flamed out in the NFL?
Oh, the quarterback fatality rate is 50% at least in the first round. You go back and you Google first round draft pick quarterbacks, how many made it compared to how many washed out. It's a staggering number. So this will be fun to see, what the dividing line is. Once you get beyond Caleb Williams, how do the next couple of dominoes fall at the quarterback position? John, we've got a couple here on social media you want to run to?
Yes, I do. So let's get in some social media folks here, and let's talk. This is a good one. Padre Chargers. This is from Tyler. He says, bottom line, the Preller experiment hasn't worked. Until the Padres make changes in the front office, they will continue to be average. The Chargers finally got it right. It only took them 2 decades.
Well, I made a commentary on my Saturday sports package on KUSI. I do this big thing, 6:30 every Saturday morning. The Padres were my lead story on Saturday. And I let me just hit myself on the side of the head. I made the comment, you lost your owner. You fired your manager. You said goodbye to your Cy Young Award winner and your top closer, and your third baseman is coming off elbow surgery. How do you feel about your team? And by the way, you lost a $60 million TV contract that you won't get, and you have to write a check for $40 million. Please tell me you're still optimistic about this franchise at this moment. Now, it's not to say they don't have a good team, not to say there's not some good kids coming out of this farm system maybe within the next year to year and a half, but all of a sudden, the excitement and the expectation has dissolved, and there's a reality now that we got problems. And obviously, the general manager has created this roster. These are his players, his draft picks, his trade acquisitions, his free agents, and the guys that he sold the farm for and then gave unbelievable contracts to. That's the big issue, is these 10, 11, 12, and 14-year contracts have put the Padres in a corner that they can't get out of. And if they don't win, I think it's going to cost Preller his job. Now, I don't think they'll hit the eject button, John, because he's signed through 2026. I don't think that they want to eat 3 years of a GM's contract. But because if you do that, then that means you're going to get rid of a whole pile of front office people, which means more people with contracts you probably got to pay off. So it's too early to make this decision, but let's just see how the season goes. And if it doesn't turn out like we hope, then they'll put him on the firing line. And can he survive it? Yeah, if it's an 80-win season, because injuries change everything. But if it turns out to really be messy, I don't know if the fans are going to come back to the stadium. That's the other sidebar issue, is the prices for everything have gone up 38% in 3 years. And you can say, hey, we've done great things and we're at Petco Park and all that. These fans are going to stop coming. Then what? Then that's another problem on top of everything else that you're having to deal with.
Well, the Padre fans are still excited. They're excited that baseball is back. They're excited that the Padres have some new guys. The fan base here is pretty loyal, especially if they're winning. But I have confidence they're going to be okay. You say the excitement is eroding. I wouldn't go that far, but I want to just flip a little bit, because in this comment here, from Tyler, he says the Chargers finally got it right after 2 decades. Do you think they got it right?
No, they haven't gotten to the playoffs. Haven't accomplished bleep.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure that I would agree, quote, they've got it right, unless he's making reference to they hit the jackpot with Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz.
Mm-hmm.
But those guys have to put it on the field. Just because you hired the name in neon lights does not mean you're not going to flame out. I mean, and they've got roster issues and they got cap issues. And now, granted, they do have the 5th and 37th pick in the first 2 rounds in the draft. They're going to have to make some deletions on the roster. So I wouldn't buy the theory they got it just because they signed Harbaugh. They got to prove that they can win with Harbaugh, and then Harbaugh's got to prove that he can handle whatever this roster is going to be, because it's not going to be the same roster. I guarantee you, when camp opens in July, John, we're not going to be talking about the same players on this team, because they're going to have to move some bodies because of the cap issue.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild, camp when they get started to see what happens with the roster.
Next social media question to slam us. Go ahead.
Okay, this one. Hey, Mr. Lee, sounds like you have a Dodgers figured out. You should go ahead and move up north and join your favorite team and leave us Southsiders alone.
Oh, thanks for following. You don't want me to tell you the truth, do you? I'm sorry. I am not going to cheerlead. I always put the topics on the table. I always tell you what my opinion is of the topics on the table, and then let you make the decision. The Dodgers are really good. The Dodgers are really deep. The Dodgers are really rich. It's the second biggest market in the country. You can't sit there, Grinder, and tell me they're not going to win. I mean, they do have Ohtani, and they do have Yamamoto, and they do have what they had at the top of that batting order. And they've got some pretty good pitching, and they might have the best young core of pitchers, headlined by Bobby Miller and all these other guys. So, I mean, the Dodgers are they're in a different solar system than San Diego, and San Diego tried to keep up with them. The most amazing thing to me is a year ago this time, we were having this dialogue because the Padres were really pissed at the media, the national media, for the use of the word sustainability, when the whole country was writing, what you just did in small market San Diego is not sustainable. And the Padres got really upset at me, at everybody in the media, the national media especially. And what's happened a year later? Now, granted, this was triggered by the passing of a great man in Peter Seidler, but all of a sudden that word sustainability has shown up in all the conversations as you can't keep doing this, and now you're going to have to reel this thing back, and your GM's given these huge contracts. The guy's going to be into their 40s till the contracts run out. So the sustainability topic has moved front and center.
It's sustainable if Peter Seidler is still alive,
Yeah.
but again, I'd love to see the Excel spreadsheet that kind of gives a top overview of their business model. So yeah, it's going to be a weird season, as we go on, but they're still going to be in the top 10 in spending, right?
No, their payroll's gone from 3 as of this afternoon. I think it's 14.
Okay, but they still have a couple more dollars in the cash register.
They have 18 million left,
Mm-hmm.
but what's that going to buy you? Is it going to buy you a lot?
Yeah.
No. And there's nobody left outside of Scott Boris's clients who you can't sign.
Trevor Bauer.
Okay. You always keep doing this. Circle back. One more here before we put a lid on this thing.
Okay, this was a good comment here from Marcus. Talk about the Major League Baseball. He says, Lee, you made no points. The product is in trouble. They need to revamp the game. The pitchers are soft. Kids watch 15-second videos, so they speed up the game. Baseball's attendance is way down, and they're going to start feeling this dramatic drop in cash revenue trending down. Yes, they still have TV money, but for how long? The ratings have crashed. Nobody's watching on TV anymore.
I totally disagree. Granted, the demographics of the game and the viewership and the fans have changed. They've made the game better by going to a faster paced game. 2 hours and 43 minutes, I think, last year. Had been at 3:05. So they've made progress there. The spending is just wild for the superstars of today. Attendance is not down. TV ratings have bumped up some. You still got troubled franchises that baseball still has to deal with, but they're no different than other people. There's hot spots and trouble spots in the NFL. There are trouble spots in the NBA. Obviously, we just alluded to the problems that the National Hockey League has. It's still a really good game. It's what I call it, a father-son game. It's passed on traditions upon traditions. If you got a good product, they're going to love your team. San Diego, love affair with the Padres. Dodgers, historical love affair. Yankees, historical love affair. Mets are trying to be what the Yankees have become, just haven't gotten there. But there's a tradition, whether it's Red Sox, Fenway Park, whether it's Cubs at Wrigleyville, there's just a tradition that's passed down from generations about the game. So I don't think the game's in trouble by any stretch. Do they have blotches and problem spots? Sure they do, but everybody else does too.
Yeah. Well, baseball is such a romantic sport,
Yes.
and it's so tied into American history and culture. And, I don't think that's going to go away, but definitely the things are shifting. I've heard a lot of other national broadcasters say that the NFL is a national sport, and so is the NBA to agree. But baseball, well, baseball's a regional sport. You know, People in New York don't care about the San Diego Padres. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, unless you're in the World Series, then you'll pay attention to who they are.
Mhm.
And I mean, the fascination with the National Football League is just amazing because they're everywhere in their state of mind, and they've been able to structure everything and how they operate their leagues very differently than some of these other sports. NBA, I think the NBA's got enormous problems, John. You got 5 top teams led by 3 superstars in each team, and the other 25 teams aren't really that important, and that's a problem the NBA's got to solve. Major League Baseball, they've got their metropolises, New York, Chicago, Boston, to a degree, sometimes San Francisco. They've got a lot of other smaller markets, but those markets are held in high esteem. Atlanta Braves baseball is really important to those people.
Mhm.
And Pirates baseball, despite all the losing, is really important to people in Western Pennsylvania until the Steelers training camp opens. But at the end of the day, there are really good franchises. There are great historical franchises. There's some trouble spots in each of the leagues.
Yeah, what's funny is when we first got cable TV in the early 1980s when I was growing up, we got WTBS.
Sure.
And you got the Braves games on every day.
And Harry Carey was yelling at you on WGN in Chicago.
Exactly. And I remember this is incredible because back then we weren't able to get baseball every day. We maybe get a weekend game or something. So that was interesting how a different region of the United States, like in this case, Atlanta or Chicago, suddenly became something that I was watching in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I think Major League Baseball still has a national scope, but to your point, the NFL is on some other level in the stratosphere.
How they've been able to market the National Football League and make it a year-round sport and make it of interest to everybody. And of course, we live in such a mobile society. The Giant fan, he might live in Phoenix now, and Seahawk fan lives in Miami, and the Bears fans have been deported and they live everywhere. So, I mean, these football fans have taken their allegiances with them to their new locales. I mean, it's just masterful what the game has become and the economic impact the game has had on professional sports, which that flips off into another argument, which then really incenses me when I deal with the NFL and the concussion lawsuits, and I see these players are having all these problems, and I understand the NFL success got there on the back and the brain damage that these players suffered from. And it's really, it makes my heart ache as much as I have broadcast the NFL, care about the NFL, follow it, write about it, etc. It makes my heart ache because there's a piece of me that understands these guys paid these prices so the NFL could be great. And we can't forget those guys. So, hey, listen, we hope you have